Hey everybody, this is Mike and you're watching Match Grade Podcast, and today we're going to present Navy Support.
We can't call it that.
Sorry, Instructor Corner. I spent a total of 12 years in the U.S. Navy as a Master at Arms. Everybody else calls it military police. It's exactly the same thing. Navy has to have random terms for other crap. Firearms instructor with Rochester Personal Defense. I mostly do the New York State 18-hour class, doing some other firearms training and stuff like that. I am also here to answer your Navy questions, and we'll play a little bit of Stump the Seaman.
Master at Arms, take that man below and clap him in irons.
So our first question comes from Dear John 56. Can't really figure out what his name is because he spelled it D-E-E-R. Most of the military do get Dear John letters, but it's D-E-A-R. His question is, are Navy sailors required to swim? Answer to that is 100% yes. When you go to boot camp, you have to learn how to swim and qualify as a third-class swimmer. If you don't know how to swim, they will teach you, mostly holding you under the water and making you swim.
Jesus Christ, Cappy, you're in the Navy for crying out loud.
Not really true. They do have kiddie pools and stuff, and they'll teach you different everything. If you start going into different things, such as special operations, stuff like that, your swim quals are completely different. If you think about the Navy SEALs, that's pretty much all they do is swim for miles and miles and miles and a few more miles. So it all depends on what your job's going to be in the Navy, but as the beginning, you have everybody qualify as a third-class swimmer. All right, next question is snapes on a plane. I don't know if he misspelled snakes or he's just trying to be cute. I'm not really sure what a snape is. What types of guns do you shoot in the Navy? Do you get to choose your firearms? In my job, it was the M9, but I'm going to date myself because they've now started with a different firearm. It's the 6-hour 320, which actually got the stuff for the Navy is the M18. So we had the sidearms, and then we would have rifles, which were the M4s, and then we'd have shotguns. And then some other departments, we would also have the M240s, which is a full-on machine gun, crew-served weapon. I was instructor for all those different things while I was there. And then if you go to different jobs, then you get to play with the fun stuff.
Whatever weapons you want, they'll hook you up with in your personal cage in the armory.
Get in the SEALs, especially DevGru. You can pick whatever you want. Anything that goes bang, makes more explosions, and makes more sound. That's where you get to play with everything. So if you want to shoot a bunch of shit, try to get into DevGru. All right, our next question comes from Captain Cook's Best Dishes. Probably a little bit of Breaking Bad reference there because that was Jesse's name was Captain Cook. What's the worst Navy movie you've ever seen? That's a tough one because I don't think I've ever really seen a bad Navy movie. When I go in to watch a movie, my general idea is I'm going to get out of that movie what I expect. So if I want to watch a good submarine movie, down Periscope is not going to be my first option.
Nobody saw that.
If I want to watch a fighter plane movie, probably going to go Top Gun. As far as the worst one that I've seen really play out, maybe Battleship. But if I'm looking for sci-fi, it's probably the best sci-fi Navy movie I've seen. That would be my option on that. Next question comes from My Girlfriend Said No To. Heard that one many times. Do you think we should bring flogging back to the UCMJ? So the UCMJ is Uniform Code of Military Justice. It is the military's rules and regulations and laws that we must follow. Flogging was beating somebody with a whip to instill good order and discipline. It could be just one tiny little whip. It could be like 5 different branches on this whip. I don't personally think that somebody beating me with a whip is going to make me have better good order and discipline. Might make me do other things. I don't think that it was really relevant, but there's been times that I've had students in my military career when I was an instructor that I would think about bringing flogging back. All right, next question comes from @Greek Pickup Lines. I don't know if that's a Yoke thing. Not really sure. What is a Greek pickup line? What does a warrant officer really do? Does anybody really know? Short answer, ain't got a freaking clue. They're supposed to be the subject matter experts in all things. They're a mixture between officers and then they go down to the enlisted.
That's because no one actually knows what the hell a warrant officer does.
That's kind of true. Got the fancy title, straddling the worlds between enlisted and officer ranks.
They're in that kind of a gray area. So the officers will bring stuff to warrants, who will then bring stuff down to the enlisted members. But short answer, no idea. Army, they fly helicopters. Navy, yell at us. All right, next one is 2 means twice as dumb. Yeah, I agree with that one. Do you choose your Navy assignment? What if I want to be a Naval Aviator or enlist in the silent service? If you don't know what that is, that means the submarine stuff. You get to choose your assignment for the most part. However, you have to meet the ASVAB score, which is the military battery of tests and everything. If you eat crayons, I'm not going to pick on a certain service that likes crayons, but you're probably not going to go into a nuclear submarine. You got to have some sort of a good ASVAB score to get into that. Naval Aviator, you have to have a degree, and then you have to go through flight school and stuff like that. It's not like an automatic pipeline. I did go right in as a Master at Arms because it was right after 9/11, and they were flooding the rate. It went from about 500 sailors to about 15,000 sailors in about 2 years. So I got in right at that beginning portion. So it was very interesting with that. But for the most part, you can negotiate your rating and stuff like that as you want to. If for some reason you don't pass your A school, though, guess what? I'm going to be chipping some paint on the side of a ship. But that's about all you got.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it's... What?
All right. This is actually probably one of the best handles I've ever heard. 2 Han shot first 2. Hell yeah, Han did shoot first. What does it mean chiefs run the Navy? Well, that is probably the truest statement you'll ever hear. Chiefs, E7s, E8s, stuff like that, they're at the point in their careers where they really are the subject matter experts.
The man you saw is a Master Chief. It's the highest rank an enlisted man can achieve in the U.S. Navy. A lot of good men spend a career trying to get there and fail.
They will pass stuff along. They do trust their E5s, E6s, and stuff like that. But the chiefs are really the guys that are kind of running the day-to-day operations on board the ship, on board the shore command, anything wherever a Navy sailor is. It's the chiefs. They get their marching orders from the higher-ups. They interpret it the way they feel like it, and then they tell the enlisted sailors what to do. I've swept water off a warship in the rain. I don't know why, but we've done it. All right. Found Waldo. Okay, you're going to love this question. How big is a Navy bunk? What if I'm a particular large individual? My friend, I heard you. Okay. Navy bunks, they're not very large at all. Smaller ships, they're even smaller. Submarines, unfortunately, you're probably going to do stuff called hot racking. One person has a rack. They get out to go to work. You get in that rack without changing the sheets. You have very, very little privacy. There's a reason they're basically called coffins. It's about maybe 2 feet high, maybe 7 feet long, maybe 3 feet wide. Very, very little room to turn around and stuff. If you're on a carrier, now you got thousands of pound airplanes landing right above your head too. Not very easy to sleep. If you go on a 6-month deployment, you'll average about 1/8 of a month of sleep. Simply Sufficient 1001. All right, this is definitely a Navy joke I've heard before. Is it a seaman or is it sailor? Everybody in the Navy is a sailor. Seaman is actually a rank. So E1, you got seaman recruit. That's what you have in boot camp. E2, you got seaman apprentice. That's where you're starting to learn your job. E3, that's where you're pretty good at your job. Now you're just a regular seaman. Once you hit E4, E5, you don't have to have those bad terms of a seaman and stuff like that. So we got Deep AK Cobra. What is the coolest tattoo you've ever seen on board? Didn't really make it a whole lot of habit to check out other people's tattoos on board the ship and stuff. A lot of the sailors, they would go get, the anchor with the ropes and stuff like that. SEAL teams, they just put tattoos on their body as far as, what their ranking and stuff is and, what their team member is. Myself personally, my favorite tattoo I've ever seen in the Navy is my Mustang tattoo that I got myself. Our next question comes from Clarence Explains It All. I wish Clarence would explain some shit to me. Why do Navy sailors always make fun of the Coast Guard? It's not that we make fun of the Coast Guard. It's just the Coast Guard's not as good as us.
No, they think they're better than us because they're combat oriented. We're the Coast Guard, Jake. Nobody really appreciates us until they need us.
It's really a spirit of Corps thing. We make fun of all the different branches and stuff. You might have heard me joking earlier about Marines eating crayons. I got Air Force friends. My first comment to them is maybe they should join the real military, such as Ed.
Have a nice day.
The biggest reason with the Coast Guard and stuff like that, we kind of have the same job. It's all maritime, but they're much more law enforcement based. A lot of Navy sailors think that the Coast Guard is, less than them because they're not war fighters. I'll tell you, I worked with a lot of the Coast Guard law enforcement people overseas and everything. Those guys can do some pretty badass shit that we really can't, keep up with. And if you're thinking drug interdiction, there's a Coast Guard detachment on every single Navy ship if they're going to make an arrest, because the Navy can't make an arrest based on the Posse Comitatus Act. Next question comes from @MealTeam9. I like it. That's kind of cool. Who comes up with names for U.S. Navy ships? Some are called states, others are for people. There's a naming convention. If you think of carriers, they're mostly going to be named for people. The state ones are kind of more going to be based on your submarines. It all based on the Navy conventions and who decides and what they want to do, and honestly, who deserves it. One of the newer ships is named for Michael Mansour. He was a well-decorated Navy SEAL, killed in Afghanistan. So that will be the next ship that's named for a person. All right, Tin Man 24. Describe what is Fleet Week.
Fleet Week is that 1 week a year when the U.S. naval ships dock and our fair city is made even fairer with cute, sweet American sailors looking for fun.
Fleet Week is a bunch of Navy sailors going into a city and getting completely annihilatedly drunk. That's the fun part for us. What it really is just a display of the Navy ships. If you've ever been in New York Fleet Week or anything, all the ships come in. San Francisco has one. San Diego has one. They kind of all over the country. It's a good time, and then people can actually get on board the ships and see what they do and what the sailors and stuff do. But it is definitely a party for the people on board the ships, too. All right, Pledge Piper 425, you got the next question. What does being sent to the brig mean? Is there really a prison on a Navy ship? I mean, they really can't escape at sea, can they? Well, if they're a Navy SEAL, they absolutely can. They can swim back to shore and probably back to the ship and back to shore, most likely without surfacing, because that's just how the crazy SEALs are. Now, as far as an actual brig, most ships will have some sort of a confinement space for people.
Captain? Harris? Jackson? What the hell is going on?
If you think of a U.S. aircraft carrier, there's 5,000 people on board that ship. It is a small city. They also need a jail or something like that. Shore commands, they will have their own brig. Charleston and San Diego have the two main Navy brigs, and that's where the worst prisoners go. It's basically the same thing as a military prison. If you think of Leavenworth, that's all a Navy brig is. But on board the ship, it's kind of just a detainment facility until they get trialed and sent away. All right, Warthog fire support. I love it. Warthogs are probably the best fire support operations out there. Nothing better than that thing coming in and going. Do Navy ships really keep cans of spinach on board? Or did Popeye the Sailor Man lie to me for my entire childhood? No, Popeye's not a liar. He does have spinach on board his ship, as does U.S. Navy. They have a great chef department, the culinary specialist, or when I was in, they were called mess specialists, but culinary sounds better. It makes them feel more important and stuff. So they absolutely do 100% have spinach on board, fresh fruits, vegetables, absolutely everything you can ever think of, anything you get at your grocery store, they have it on board the ship. All right, next one comes screenshot tactical for you. All right, I don't know, whatever. He's a Twitter commando. I have no idea what that means. How long is shore leave? Are you allowed to drink on shore leave? Does it depend on how long and where you are? The length of shore leave does depend on how long you're in the port of call. It also depends on your commanding officer.
Recall the crew.
We've just been given a 2-day pass, sir.
Tell me something, Exo. How many pubs are there in Fast Lane?
2.
Then let's devise a radical plan. You look in one, now look in the other.
It also based on if you can drink or not, all the same factors. So sometimes you'll have a 96-hour liberty, which is basically 96 hours off. Pretty much do whatever you want. Just got to be back to the ship sometimes at night. Sometimes you can stay out in town. Other times you might have a 12-hour liberty. The reason for that is you might have to go right back to duty. So you probably wouldn't want to drink at all on that one. If you stumble up the gangway, the master-at-arms covering the gangway or the steps up of the ship are going to be able to tell you're annihilated, and you're probably going to end up in the brig that we just talked about a few minutes ago. That cheeky bugger 88. Why do people say swear like a sailor when you're not supposed to swear aboard a ship? Well, I'm going to tell you that's a bunch of bullshit. I have no idea. I told you all that bunch of crazy that you can't have swear aboard a ship, because that's all we do. Okay? Swear like a sailor is a very good term. Some people will say I swear like a sailor. Well, the thing is, I actually was a sailor, so you guys swear like me, ergo, I am a role model.
Shitbox! This crew is the most incompetent bunch of retards and assholes in naval history!
Red Viper of Dorn. I don't know if Ed can help me out. That almost sounds like a Korean term or something that says Dorn. I have no idea.
I will be your champion.
What's a typical meal on a ship like? Are there special food nights or occasions on holidays? The food is actually probably one of the best things about being aboard a ship. You don't get a body like mine by passing up good meals. Yeah, I will tell you that, guys, right now. There are special occasions. There's special food nights. We have lobster nights. Sometimes when we cross the equator, they'll have special meals. We have holiday meals. Honestly, the military, we have 4 square meals a day. Yes, everybody says 3, but we have also called mid-rats. So that's a midnight rations. Anybody's allowed to have it, but the ship is running 24 hours a day. They're doing flight ops, so the culinary specialists really have their hands full, feeding 4 meals to 5,000 people, but it is some dang good food. All right, next one. At Crisscross, they forgot the applesauce. I just finished watching an episode of SEAL Team. Great movie. They're in a Navy ship. What is a layman's explanation of condition Yoke and condition Zebra?
All departments, set conditions for threat con dog Zebra.
So Yoke is just kind of some things are secured, some things are not secured. It's a basic underway condition. Zebra, everything's locked down. So you're not allowed to really move a whole lot about the ship. In that episode, I do remember that because that is a great show. I love watching SEAL Team. The reason they put them into Zebra is because DevGru was leaving the ship and they don't want everybody to find out that they're there and all this other stuff. So there's a whole bunch of different things with the conditions. And my last one is Brew Recruit. Well, you're going to fit in the Navy damn good if you're drinking brews. I'll tell you that right now. I have a nephew who's headed to Annapolis in a few months. I apologize. He's going to become an officer. Are there any pieces of advice that you would tell him? Don't be an officer. No, not really. Officers, as long as they do the good things and, treat their sailors right, they're fine. Some of the best officers I had, though, were actually what we call Mustangs. They came all the way up through the ranking and stuff, not through Annapolis. The best advice I can tell them, keep your head down, keep pushing through, and pray they don't know your name. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to Match Grade Podcast. Hope we had a little bit of fun. I did beat you guys. Nobody stumped the Seaman today. If you liked it, check out our channel. We have a lot more great stuff on there. And remember this, above all, go Navy, beat Army, because they